Welcome back to this week's episode of Black Plague Precision, where we do our final thoughts video on the MK machining products that we've been reviewing for the last month. Let's jump into it. All right, guys, if you haven't been following along with the series, we've been testing out, we've been training with, we've been implementing 3 items from MK machining into our system. Now, I shoot F-class competitions. I have a weight restriction, 22 pounds. So it's really important to me that if I'm gonna add anything on, that I have to make weight reductions. And that's sort of why I went with these 3 products. Now, if you don't remember, the 3 products are 1, the magnifiers. These are designed and used to magnify the turrets. They are the next generation that they've released, and they are outstanding. But we'll get into that in a second. The second one is the extreme low profile bubble level. Now, I wasn't sure how big of a difference this was gonna make. I was a little worried about the placement on it, but this thing is pretty outstanding, and it helped me pretty well when I went out and shot. So we're gonna get into that as well. Last thing, we're gonna talk about the single shot sled. Now, this item I didn't necessarily need because I already had a single sled that was working pretty good, but there were some significant improvements in this product that I was pretty excited about. And because I was adding a little bit of weight on with the magnifiers and with the new bubble level, which was a little bit heavier than my old one, I thought, okay, this is a good chance to test out a new product and at least try to get some weight reduction, because the one that I was using is a little heavy and this one's lighter. So that's what we worked on. Let's jump into it and let's talk about each one. All right, so I shot at 100, 300, and 1,000 yard competition with these products. I also did 2,000 rounds of dry fire behind this with the turrets, and it has made a world of difference for me. Now, I do want to preface this with saying I have had eye issues for the last couple of years. One in particular, I had to get cataract surgeries on both of my eyes at the end of this last year. And so what happened is I now have 20/20 vision far, but when I'm close, I have a little bit. Now, luckily I can see down the scope lens pretty well, but when I was looking at my turrets, oh man, I was having problems with that. Now I could feel it, I could hear it, but it helps to be able to see it as well. And that's why I thought, okay, it's time to make this addition to my rig so I can be competitive, because it is a timed event, right? And you don't want to accidentally lose a point because you dialed incorrectly. So the Gen 2 Pro Series turret magnifiers really made an impact for me. Now, when I went out to the 100 yards, you know, it was pretty good, but I don't do a lot of dialing there. And I didn't do a ton of dialing when I was at the 300 because both those days weren't very windy, but it was nice to be behind the rig. The placement of them are very nice. And as a whole, I was able to see significantly better. Now, I put out a video on this, and you guys can go watch it on what my vision looks like versus probably, if you have 20/20 vision, what your vision looks like. But if you have any sort of eye issues, if you have deteriorating eye vision, if you're a little bit older and you can't see quite as well, I would highly recommend this product. Plus, personally, I think they look pretty cool. Now, when I was at the 1,000 yards, that's where I really needed to see this. It was a little bit of a darker day. We had not super high winds, but for us, high winds, 10 to 13 miles per hour. It was gusty, it started raining a little bit. And so I was having to do a lot more adjustment to really deal with that wind. And oh my God, was it so nice to just be able to stay on that. Honestly, I totally even forgot about them. I totally forgot about everything because I could just see. It wasn't something that I needed to worry about. So for me, that was extremely impactful. And I really think that in that competition, it made a significant difference for me. I'm very happy with that in general. And I think that this small addition is going to continue to make a big impact for me. And it already has at 1,000 yards. And I would definitely give this product a 10 out of 10 for what it's doing. Not only that, the price point is outstanding. They are $40 each, which is pretty cheap when you consider that I've seen some out there that are $150. These do the job extremely well. The glass is really clear. The magnification is great. So highly recommend this product. Now, the next product. Now, for the actual bubble. Now, MK Machining offers two different types of bubbles. One goes on the actual rail, and this one that I got goes on the scope. Now, I have a 34 millimeter tube, so that's what I went with. And I was a little bit worried about the placement on this because I do have the magnifiers on both the windage and elevation. I thought, oh no, this is going to block, but it didn't. It was literally the perfect height. It had no placement around that lens, so I could see the turret's wall. I can see that wall. Now, here's the big thing for me. I was running the Collis bubble level because I run a Collis scope. And so when I was buying everything, I bought it together. And it is robust, it's strong, it works well. I never had any movement on it, nothing like that. But the bubble was quite big. And if you take a look at this MK Machining product, they're a lot more precise, right? And the more precise we can get with things in F-class shooting, the better. So you can see that it has the two lines on the side, the one line in the middle, plus the bubble is probably like 1/6 of the size. So this worked out really well when I was at the 100 yards and the 300 yards, but it's really what is going to happen and what matters when I'm at 1,000 yards. And when I went to the 1,000 yards, that's where I really started to see the impact and impressiveness of this. I always had a really difficult time with that larger bubble because there's two lines. The big bubble almost took up that entire section in the middle, and I would just cant it to the left a little bit. I touched the left edge, and that's how I zeroed it and things like that, but it's not super accurate. And so I always felt a little bit like my shooting was being impacted by that. This fixed that problem. The bubble is a lot smaller. It's in a much tighter space, and because of that, as long as I kept it right there in the middle, I felt like I was impacting exactly where I expected it to be. And for me, that gave me peace of mind. It took a little bit of anxiety away, and man, did I see some good scores come out of this. So I think overall, right, the extreme low profile, it's in the perfect position. It doesn't interfere with your turrets. It's really, really nicely made. So, it can take a beating or an impact if you need to, but also it just looks really nice. But functionally, the best part about it is that it is such a smaller bubble, that it is so much more precise. And so long as you get it lined up with your scope correctly, which if you haven't seen my other video, go check that out, because that's exactly what we do. We line it up exactly correct. This thing will help you shoot lights out. It made a huge impact for me at this 1,000 yards, and I'm very excited to take it out to more competitions because this, partnered with the magnifiers, alone have made a big impact at that competition. So I would give this product probably a 9 out of 10. I'd give it a 10 out of 10, but I will say that if you need the magnifiers and you have the bubble is really small, and so luckily I can see it. But if you need the magnifiers, you might not be able to see the bubble just as well because it is smaller. So just keep that in mind. But overall, it is a terrific product, and even with my eyes and needing the magnifiers, this thing was impactful. And last up, with our MK Machining experience, the single shot sled. Now, again, I already had a product for this, so I was a little like, was this worth buying it? But it's not that expensive, honestly, at about $35. So I think for that price point, it was worth testing it out. And for me, again, I knew that I was buying this as a system, right? I was going to be getting the magnifiers. I was going to be getting the new extreme low profile bubble level, and that was going to add a little bit of weight on, and I already pushed my weight limit pretty close. So I needed to take that sled and make an adjustment. Now, luckily I did that because when I weighed, I was at 21.7 pounds. and my limit's 22, so I didn't have a lot of weight to give up. So this little thing helped me. And then keep in mind that scales are not always the same. So if I had to weigh my rifle at another place, it's really important that that works. Now, this thing performed really well. I will say this, and I mentioned this in my video for the install. I wasn't really sure because the essentially the belly that's in there, or the little goalie, or the indentation there, that isn't as big as the other one that I was using. And I thought, well, does that make a difference? And I will say this, and I don't know if it's a problem or not with the other product I was using, but I will say this. When I was feeding with the other one, the bobsled, I did occasionally get caught up when I was feeding the bolt forward. Now, and when I say caught up, I mean the bullet would sort of get stuck, and then I'd have to come back just a little bit and then drive it forward, and it would be fine. I don't like that because I'm doing competition shooting and I don't want any sort of indentations or dents on my brass. But I don't know if that was necessarily a problem with that system. But I will say this. I shot about 60-ish rounds at the 1,000-yard range, and I didn't have one single problem with that on this system. Now, I'll need to run it, more. I did a lot of dry firing with it. I had 2,000 rounds of dry firing with it, where I did put the caps in there and run those. And so I never had any issues on that front. So I'm sort of feeling that narrower area is better for keeping it more in line directly in the middle for feeding. But again, I would have to do a lot more testing, but for me, it did feel like that. Also, the weight was a big factor for me. So the fact that it's still robust, it's still strong and lighter is really, really important. And then the last thing is, and you'll have to look at this in my other videos, and I'll throw it up on here, but you can see that when I was actually putting in the bobsled, it disappears. I have no real place to grab it for when I'm trying to take it back out. I didn't like that. And so on this one, it's a little bit longer and I can grab it. Now, I sort of wish they were the same length as normal magazines, although I am worried about the weight, so maybe not. But I like the idea that you could put it into, a magazine holder pouch or whatever while you're walking around with this, sort of the same way they do with PRS. But for what it is, I think that this is an amazing product. I would definitely give this a 10 out of 10. If you're looking for single feeding, there isn't a single thing wrong with this product. And especially if you are worried about any sort of weight and things like that, if you are making a transition from PRS shooting or NRL shooting or hunting or whatever, and you do have a magazine fed and you want to do the bench rest shooting, or you want to do F-class shooting, this is the solution that you're going to have to go with, unless you switch from a chassis to a stock and you change, to a new action and all of that sort of stuff. This is a cheap and effective way to do it. Now, I will talk about my scores in a second. So, but I do just want to say that this is an amazing product, would highly recommend it. And it worked all great with the entire system that I had in place. All right, so that 1,000-yard competition I did, I got a 91% hit ratio. Now, if we're looking at the National Rifle Association marksmanship scores on what you have to give, or what you have to get in order to be ranked at a certain level, in order to get High Master, which is the highest level of shooting, I think you have to get like a 97% hit ratio, which means that every time that you shoot, the highest score you can get is a 10. And then the further it goes from the bullseye, the less points you get. So you need to get a 97%. I got a 91%. Now, maybe that doesn't sound super great, but for me, I felt very good. And a lot of it went that direction because of the new products that I integrated in my system. The magnifiers, being able to see, being able to really effectively dial where I need to be and not have to worry about it, and not have to like scoot up on my scope to be able, or scoot up on my rifle to be able to see, was really important. The bubble level is the most impactful thing that I had because it is so much more precise than what I had. I felt way more confident and my shots were going, right in exactly where I wanted them, outside of where the wind was pushing them, which is what we had a lot of trouble with that day. And there's a couple other things I need to help with that process, but that, and then being able to make weight and single feeding, all of that stuff worked together perfectly at this competition. And for my skill set, for my level where I'm at, it made a big impact. Now, I will say this: when you're doing competition shooting, it is really important to be comfortable in your space. So important. Now, I did 2,000 dry fires with these products before I took it out for competition. I took it out, I did 80 shots at 100 and 300 yards. So I took it out, I did dry firing, I did live firing, and I took it to a competition. I got time behind it. And I will say that these 3 products made a significant impact for me. Now, they are case use. You might not need them if you don't have eye problems, or you already feel like you have a good bubble system, but or you don't do single feeding. But I would definitely, if it's something you're considering, I cannot endorse this anymore. They are staying on my rig. They are not going anywhere. And I'm excited to continue to test these out for the rest of the year. If you guys want to see more on that, follow me on all of my social media accounts. Thank you guys, and you guys have a great day.